All right, YouTube, this is installment 3 of the Bankroll Challenge. So we're doing good so far. Just got in for a 1-3 table, buying in at 300. We're going to try to run it up. Let's get right to it. All right, so in our first hand, we're looking down at Ace Jack of Diamonds. We are in the small blind. The OMC is on the button, and he raised it up to 6. Of course, I'm going to re-raise this. You would say, why would you raise an OMC? But an OMC raise, if he has like a very strong hand, aces or kings, is going to be like 20, something like that in this type of game. The $6 min raise is just like a pot sweetener for their medium strength hand. But when I raise it up, he decides to call, and we're off to a flop of 7-8 deuce with 2 hearts. So I didn't hit nothing on this board, but he probably shouldn't have either. So I decided to bet out for 20, and he snap rips it all in. So it's for 260 effective. Obviously, I snap fold. He ends up showing a set of sevens and said that he was scared of the heart. That's why he jammed. But it is what it is. I'm gonna let him tell y'all what he had to say about it, and then we're on to the next hand.
Come on back here. Don't be running.
I had ace high. What you want me to do? All right, so we're moving on to the second hand of the day, and we have 6-8 suited in the big blind. There's the +2 raised to 12. There's 3 callers, including myself, and we're off to a flop, which comes king 8 6 with 2 clubs. And of course, I check in flow, and +2 decides to bet 26. It folds to me, and I decide to just call. Definitely should be putting in a raise here with a flush draw, and there's a king out there too, so he might be able to pay off a raise if he has something like that. But as played, I just call, and the turn is a 7. So now on this offsuit 7, I should definitely be leading here because let's say he had like a hand like pocket queens, he definitely is going to want to check this back. Or even if he had a hand like ace king or king queen, he would check this back. So I definitely should have led here. So, and of course, it checks through. The river is a deuce offsuit, of course, so the flush draw bricks out. And maybe I can bet big to make him think I have a flush draw, because at this point, I'm only trying to target a top pair holding, not a under pair. Like, I'm not trying to go for jacks or something like that. So I decided to bet 55. He tanks for a little while, so I guess he does have a decision, but he ends up folding. I really think that I definitely should have raised the flop or definitely led the turn. But as played, we win the pot and we're off. Okay, so here we are in the worst hand we played of the day. We have 8-9 of diamonds in the big blind. There's a small blind raised to 6. Definitely should be re-raising this, but I just decided to complete. And we're going off 3 ways to the flop because the under the gun decided to limp call. And we're off to a flop which comes 10 7 7 with 2 diamonds. So we have an open-ended straight flush draw. So we have outs even versus pocket sevens right now. So when the small blind decides to bet 10, I should definitely be putting in a raise here, but I just call, and the under the gun limper decides to call, so that's alarming because he could definitely have anything limp calling. And the turn is a queen, and the small blind checks now, and I decide to check, and under the gun decides to check. So now the river is a 5, and the small blind checks again. I definitely think that I should be putting this bet here. I know if I pull this trigger here, I'll get them to fold when it goes check check on the turn and river. And so I'm thinking about it. But then I don't know. I guess I get nervous and I just check it back. And under the gun checks, and small blind shows pocket 4s, and so definitely would have folded if I pulled the trigger. And that's the problem with when you have the massive combo draws, you got to play them aggressively, because if you don't, you're only relying on making your draw to win. And with that, it's only going to give you one way to win. If you play aggressively, you can get somebody to fold, and you can also make your hand, and that's the proper way to play poker. So I really messed this one up, but you know, you got to shake it off and you got to go on to the next hand and do better. So let's go. All right, so we're definitely looking to bounce back. We have king queen in the cutoff. The hijack, who is the same OMC player, he raises it to 6. That's his pot sweetener size, and so I decided to 3-bet him to 20, and he decides to call. The flop comes 9-9-7 with 2 clubs. So seeing as that we have 2 overs and a backdoor club draw, we decided to bet 15, and he sticks around as well. So now the turn is an ace of clubs. So we do have the nut flush draw, but he could definitely have an ace. So I decide to check when he checks to me, and now the river is the deuce of clubs. And so he checks, and now with the nut flush draw, I know he doesn't have any boats. So I'm for sure going to go for value. And I decided to size up to 40. And he thinks about it for a second, but he folds. He shows face up that he has ace king of spades. So it just shows you that he's small raising with ace king suited and not even four betting me. But I think I definitely should have went for a smaller size of 20, knowing that he probably doesn't have a large club to call a bet. He probably just had an ace. So maybe, maybe not. But either way, we get a little bit coming our way, and we're off to another hand where we do get some value. Alrighty, so y'all are going to have to forgive me. I recorded late because I didn't know this was going to be such a big hand. So we have deuce four of hearts in the small blind. It limps around 5 ways, and we get off to the flop, which comes 9-4 deuce with 2 spades. So we flop bottom 2 pair, which is great. So I check, and it checks all the way around to the button who decides to bet 15. It's the same as pot, but it's only a $15 bet, so you don't got to read too much into it. And right when it gets to me, I'm going to raise it up to 45, trying to charge any of the draws. I want to de-incentivize any of the field players to try to come along with their flush draw, and I want to get a heads up with this guy. And so I get my wish, and only he calls. So now we're off to the turn, which is the worst card. It is the king of spade. Not bad in the sense of I feel like I'm behind now, but I just know this is going to shut down a lot of the action. I feel like when he calls, he probably had like a top pair kind of hand and thought I was on a flush draw. And so now that's just the worst card because it's an overcard and a spade. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to call anything, but I still have to bet. So I decided to throw out a bet of 55. And he doesn't think about it for too long. And then he folds. And then he shows that he had ace 9. And so I knew that was such an ugly card. But nonetheless, for a limp pot, it was definitely a decent amount of profit to be gained. And so now we're off to the final hand of the night. Let's go. Alrighty, this is the last hand of the session, and I promise it will not disappoint. We have pocket sixes in the big blind. There's a straddle. There's a few calls in front. The small blind calls. So I decided just to call. I could be squeezing here, trying to target that dead money, but I'm just deciding to set mine, and the straddle decides to complete. So we're off to a flop, which comes ace, king, 6 with 2 hearts. So we flop bottom set on a board that has a flush draw. And a lot of people like to limp weak aces. And so I could be trying to put in the check raise, but I just decided to go ahead and do my own work. So I lead out for $15, and I get no less than 3 calls. So definitely somebody has an ace, and definitely somebody else has a flush draw. Now we're off to the turn, which is an offsuit 9. Seeing that there was so much interest on that flop, I'm going to size this up and try to see who's my customer. So I go to 75 and everyone folds besides the small blind to my right. And now I'm just hoping for a non-heart river. And that's exactly what we get. We have a 10. Now, if he happens to have 8-7 of hearts, that would be a nasty backdoor straight that hit. But nonetheless, he only has 35, so I'm not worried about it. I go all in, and he thinks about it for a moment, and he actually is thinking about folding, but then he looks at his stack, sees he only has 35 left, so there's no point in doing nothing. Even if he's behind, he just probably wants to see what he's beat with. And so he calls, I show my set, and we are good, and we win a really big pot at the end of our session. That's going to put us way into the profit. So now we're about to see how we did. I'm going to see y'all on the outro. All right, so that's it for the session. Bought in for 300, cashed out for 515, profited 215. Not too bad. It's another win to the Bankroll Challenge. So that is, we won, what was it? 800 on the first one, $400 on the second one, 215. So That should put us at about 14, 15 profit. So we're at $6,415. Only need about 35, 85 before we get to our 10K. So appreciate y'all watching. Y'all know to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.